It's 7:06. It's O'Connor and Company this Wednesday morning. Coming up in 30 minutes, James Rosen, White House correspondent for Newsmax. 8:05, Brent Bozell, Media Research Center. And then at 8:35, Jessica Robertson of the Duck Dynasty Robertsons. I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning, Julie. Julie, usually if an high-ranking administration official is arrested and convicted of a crime like, stealing luggage, larceny, right? Stealing luggage off the carousel at an airport. That would get a lot of attention. The media would go and focus some time on the trial and certainly on the sentencing. Here you've got a highly placed Biden administration official facing sentencing yesterday.
Yeah, you would think it would at least generate the same amount of interest for, say, I don't know, someone standing outside on the Capitol lawn on January 6th. Right?
Yeah, exactly, who got arrested. But not so much. In fact, one of the only reporters in the room for Sam Brinton's sentencing was our guest, reporter from Washington Free Beacon, Thomas Catenacci. Thomas, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Larry.
Is it true? Were you alone there? Was there anyone else covering this story with you?
Yeah, I was the only one. I was kind of shocked too. And actually, this was a hearing that took place last week. And the reason why we reported yesterday is because we were waiting for the details on a separate settlement in a related case on civil charges and a civil lawsuit against Brinton in Maryland. But yeah, it was it was a little shocking. I showed up kind of expecting, because this has been a case I've followed for 2 years, and I was expecting a little bit more interest from the media. And it finished. The hearing finished, and I just walked out of the room with Sam and his legal counsel, and I asked him. I said, do you have anything to say for yourself? Obviously, there's been a lot of attention. Do you want to clear your name at all? And he just kind of laughed it off and said, no, I don't. His lawyer, lawyers always want to talk on behalf of their client. His lawyer tried to kind of push me away. And then his husband was the one that was more angry. I think he knew who I was. I've been covering this case, like I said, for 2 years. And his husband basically said, please go away. We have no time for this. Go, just push me away. So
for the uninitiated, Sam Brinton, who was an official at the Department of Energy, his responsibilities included a top secret clearance because it involved a nuclear energy policy. He was ballyhooed and celebrated in June of 22 as the first ever non-binary, gender-fluid federal appointee. He would show up on red carpet galas here in D.C. wearing a woman's dress, high heels, bald head, mustache
red lipstick.
Yeah. Didn't he get a photo spread in Vogue, I want to say? And Vanity Fair, perhaps.
Yes,
it was Vanity Fair.
Yes.
And by the way, a lot of those dresses that he appeared on the red carpets, apparently he stole.
Right.
He stole from women by stealing their luggage.
He is a suitcase snatcher. Tell us about the women he stole the clothes and their suitcases from. Were they in the courtroom? Were they there? I think he reached a settlement with them, but were any of them there? Have you heard from them? Have they responded to this?
So there are three separate cases here. And the first one was in Las Vegas. The second was in Minneapolis. Those women have chosen to be anonymous. And in those two cases, more left-leaning judges, again, gave him leniency. He escaped jail time. It was really just a slap on the wrist. And that's kind of the broader point is throughout this entire saga, if you will, he's been treated with kid gloves, even though these are serious crimes. In the third case, though, this most recent one was happened at Reagan National Airport. And the victim in that case was a Tanzanian female fashion designer. And this woman was really upset because, like you said, Larry, her work that was worn by Sam Brinton was, in all of these top-end, magazines like Vanity Fair that a female designer like herself would die to.
She got no credit.
And she got absolutely no credit. Sam, was interviewed and refused to say anything about the clothes that he was
Sam,
wearing.
who are you wearing? It's just something I picked up at the airport, believe it or not.
Well,
but it's that egregious, right? And you think about the damage that will have on a woman like herself. So she came forward. I spoke to her last year. She's a foreign woman, kind of broken English, but very, very distraught by this whole thing, just torn apart because she's seeing people praise her work but get no credit for it. And so that was a different element of this particular case.
Thomas, isn't it also worth mentioning that this ended up in the Arlington courts and the Soros-backed DA in Arlington? This was prosecuted, or really the deal was struck by this Parisa Dagani-Tafti, who has a sort of habit of letting criminals go. It was her office that prosecuted this. Isn't that true?
Yeah, it is. It was the deal, the adult diversion deal with Sam was under this restorative justice program.
Of course.
And it's very interesting when you go to their website, the Commonwealth's website, because it links to a nonprofit called Restorative Arlington.
Ugh.
And it's just all, it's all the buzzwords that
Right.
you can imagine. I don't even have to read them, but they talk about bringing in indigenous knowledge and, strengthening community practices and working together for equity and inclusion. And it's like we're talking about criminals here.
Well,
and that's what always confuses someone like me is, there are real victims here, and we're talking about bringing in indigenous knowledge. I don't want to downplay that stuff, but it does seem a little bit ridiculous for the average person when we should probably be trying to prosecute.
Well, it's also kind of funny that he did this whiter than white Biden official stole an actual African woman's clothing, passing it off as his own, not giving her credit. There seems to be, you'd think Parisa would be a little bit upset about that.
The victim here is black.
Yes.
And the criminal is white.
Yes.
But the criminal is also transgender or gender fluid.
That's
and
right.
a Democrat
He's
and worked for Joe
you're
Biden.
Right. He's higher on the ladder.
I mean, Thomas, I got to ask, what do you think has motivated not only the slap on the wrist here, but also the media blackout? Is it because of the transgender thing? Because we can't think that there's any sort of mental illness or criminal behavior associated with that sort of deal. Or is it just, Democrat liberal politics at play, or is it all of the above? What do you think?
Oh, it has to be all of the above. And it's been consistent. What's so interesting is how in these cases, part of the, quote unquote punishment is always to tell Sam to get mental health treatment. And that always just kind of strikes me as an acknowledgement that there's something else going on here. And then the community service aspect to it, it just all kind of strikes me as ways of getting around actual punishment, actual accountability. And so when I see that, I think, okay, there's something else going on. They recognize that he was a high-ranking appointee in the Biden administration. Probably wouldn't look good for their friends to have someone like that sitting behind bars. Probably wouldn't look good for their friends who touted this guy as, a hero of the DEI.
Right. He broke the glass ceiling. He's an icon. Right. Sam Brinton. Sam Brinton's now a convicted felon, but will not serve any time in prison. So it almost seems like there's two rules out there, Thomas. Listen, thanks for joining us. Thanks for covering this, too. You guys at the Free Beacon are great. We love you.
Of course. My pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank you for having me.
That's Thomas Catenacci. You can get his stuff and learn more about Sam Brinton over there at Washington Free Beacon at 7:15.
On the next Vince Coglianese show, President Trump's attorney reacts to all of the big news of the week. Join us 3 to 6 right here on WMAL.
Well, the momentum here continues to roll toward the Democrats choosing to remove Joe Biden from their ticket, if not the presidency completely. And right now it appears that the solution is to replace him with Kamala Harris. So there's a lot of reasons why Kamala Harris would be the selection. Number one, just politically, it's kind of impossible to say that she's been equipped to be next in line for the presidency this entire time. But then when the actual opportunity comes along, you look somewhere else. There's also the racial and gender aspect of this, as she would be a historic figure, the first black woman president, that sort of thing. The problem is she doesn't poll very well. She's rather unpopular, too, because she's seen as, well, a awkward buffoon who is ill-equipped for the presidency.
People really do pick up on her word salad. I don't think this this goes over well. I think people know that she's sort of this empty suit. And
Even The Daily Show has made fun of her.
Yes. And, this unburdened by what has been, and all that stuff. It's a little bit of, it's actually like Oprah talk, but not as smart. And I don't think it goes over well with the American public.
Real Clear Politics now has 5 national polls taken after the debate. Trump's lead has expanded to close to 3 points nationally over Joe Biden. That's critically important, not because we elect presidents based on national polls. It's state by state. But even when a Republican is winning in the Electoral College by putting together the right formula for the number of states, they tend to fall behind in national polls. Very rarely does a Republican take the lead in a national poll. I mean, we're going back to 2004 when that was the last occurrence. And now not only is he in the lead, but it's an expanded lead right now over Joe Biden. Joe Biden's numbers are absolutely tanking because of that, as well as in the states. Any talk of bringing in Gavin Newsom or well, take a listen to this person, Areva Martin, an attorney and one of the delegates from the state of California. She was on the Stephen A. Smith podcast.
First of all, Stephen, who are we agreeing? There's a long list of Democrats: Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer. The list goes on and on and on. You've named 4 or 5 people. Where is their consensus? You've got to build consensus, and there is not consensus right now. If you pick a white man over Kamala Harris, black women, I can tell you this: we're going to walk away. We're going to blow the party up. If you pick the black woman...
Who are you going to walk away to, Areva?
There you go. We're going to blow the party up if you
That's
bypass the black woman and put. I mean, and again, it's if you care about race and gender.
Such a betrayal.
Exactly. Of course it was. But see, they've taken the black vote for granted for so long. As Stephen A. Smith just said, where are you going to go?
Kamala is a classic DEI hire. She was put there because of her race and because of her gender. She is an empty suit. People know that, but now they're trapped and they have to go with her.
Right now, Nate Silver, who's done a round of polls on this or analyzed the polls, right now, Joe Biden does the worst of any Democrat in the polls. That includes Kamala Harris. Everybody is polling better as you throw their name out there than Joe Biden is. So will it happen? If it's the case and they do end up moving toward Kamala Harris, I have been predicting this for a while, that I do see this as their only political – it is a Hail Mary. But if they remove Biden from office, or if he steps down, or whatever they do, he's magnanimous, he's a patriot for the best of the country, whatever.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris runs as the president.
That's right.
Not as the vice president, as Joe Biden plays out his term in office. No. She is running as the president of the United States, the historic first black woman in American history. She'll go on an international tour.
Yes.
She'll get photo ops with the king. She'll get photo ops with Macron and all over the place. And then Donald Trump is now that might rally black support. It might rally female support. She's going to get a huge honeymoon from the media. And I think that's their only chance to win.
Yeah, and the media is not going to report on Kamala Harris incarcerating more black men than anybody else. Ooh. No, they're going to be completely silent on this. They're going to give her the Vogue treatment.
That's right. Oh, God, the covers, the magazine covers?
Her husband, Mike, or whatever his name is, he's going to...
Isn't it Lance or Bruce?
Bill. It's Bill.
Oh, it's Bill. Okay.
It's Bill. He's going to have, a spread in whatever magazine they're going to... I mean, it is going to be full court press.
That's right. And they're going to try to drag her across. And listen, she's an empty vessel as well. She will carry it. She's there because Barack Obama said pick her.
Yep.
Obama loved her when he was president and she was attorney general. She will do what she's told, and she's their chance to win. I don't think she will, but that's their chance. I'm giving you analysis that is my opinion. If that's the case and she becomes president, this is a very telling article here about her attention to detail right now as vice president, because you would think that she'd be ready. She always says, I'm ready at a moment's notice if I have to be president. Well, a former underling of Kamala Harris says she routinely refused to review briefing materials and would scold employees when she appeared unprepared. This is, I think, from the Daily Mail. She doesn't read her daily briefings. She hasn't on a regular basis.
Likened her to a workplace bully.
More staffers are considering leaving Vice President Kamala Harris's office. People familiar with the conversations revealed 4 top aides to Harris will exit in the span of about a month. She's had the turnover in her office has been palpable. And And, let's not forget what a brilliant politician and orator she is. I mean, she's truly one of the brightest minds that has ever graced us over the years.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been. You know? What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be unburdened by what has been.
What can be
Unburdened by what has been.
what we can see, what we believe can be.
I just want
unburdened by what has been.
to reiterate the whole thesis of this segment here and what we've been discussing is this woman right here,
What has been. What can be unburdened by what has been.
that woman right there is their best chance. She's the best chance they've got of keeping power in the White House.
I'm not scared. Everything's fine.
Everything's absolutely fine. It's 7:24.
Now,
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:37. It's O'Connor and Company this Wednesday, 3rd day of July. Happy Independence Day. Let us be the first to say Happy Independence Day. I know that we're first because it's not actually Independence Day yet, but we will be here live tomorrow morning for your Independence Day. So you're waking up and you're shucking the corn on the cob, or you're getting your pork butt on the Weber and starting the smoking process, or whatever you're going to be doing. We'll be right along with you. Also at 8:05, Brent Bozell will be joining us this morning, and at 8:35, Jessica Robertson of the Duck Dynasty. She's got a brand new book. All the Ducks have a new book there about patriotism. That's Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
I'm Larry O'Connor. And this, my friends, is James Rosen. James, happy Independence Day. Good morning.
And to you, thanks for having me back. It's good to be back with both of
you. It was January of 2022 when you asked a pretty relevant question, I think, to the President of the United States.
A poll released this morning by Politico Morning Consult found 49% of registered voters disagreeing with the statement, Joe Biden is mentally fit.
He went on, of course, to interrupt you various times and say, watch me, which was always his pat answer. But the question was,
why? Now we're taught in broadcasting school never to correct the anchor, but in this
correct
case,
me, please.
Factual accuracy compels me to do so. First, I want it noted that I began by saying that I wanted to raise a delicate issue,
yes,
but with utmost respect for your lifetime accomplishments and the high office you hold. And the specific question was, why do you suppose such large segments of the American electorate have come to harbor?
Right. I was, if you hadn't interrupted me, actually.
No, but you said
tried to
he
correct
answered by saying, watch me. That is not what he answered.
Oh, nobody interrupted you with that, didn't he? I thought he interrupted you, and then finally you said, well, no, the question, sir, is why do you think people believe this?
What he interrupted was to say, well, I'll let others make that judgment. But at the end, when I got the question out, all he said was, I have no idea.
Yeah.
And that answer, to many eyes, validated the question, because someone who tells you I have no idea is, in a sense, speaking to a mind that is literally empty. This was 2.5 years ago. Ago. At the time when I posed that question, it was considered by my colleagues in the White House press corps rude and fringy. And as a result of it, I was blackballed by the White House in White House press briefings and press calls and background briefings under Jen Psaki and then Karine Jean-Pierre, for 8 months. And now I am proud that I asked the question. I derive no gratification from it because the issue itself, the underlying issue, is so sad and concerning. But nonetheless, I think 2.5 years down the line from my asking that question, it is now clear to all that this is, in fact, the defining issue of the Biden presidency.
Well said, sir.
Well, you did ask a question yesterday. You asked if Biden is disabled.
Yeah, let's hear it. Yeah.
But we do believe this was in this instance, it was a bad night.
Is he disabled?
No. And let me finish with your colleague, please. And I know, but shouting out, come on. You know better.
Were you feeling frustrated at that point? Because I certainly was as a viewer, and I was so glad to hear you ask that question, which is what I think most Americans were screaming at the television. Were you just feeling frustrated at that point? And we'll get to the point. She always slow walks this. Her questions or her answers are always so slow. What were you feeling at that moment?
For me to step foot into the White House press briefing room is to feel frustration. I have not been called on in that room by Karine Jean-Pierre since last November, and that was when I extracted from her the concessions that the polling data that has shown the president underwater in his job approval ratings for 2+ years, and which continues today, was legitimate polling data, and no one challenges the accuracy of it. And B, as she put it to me on that occasion, quote, "We're not going to change the minds of Americans." I get that. So that was the last time I was called on. So I am reduced to practicing what I call the art of interjection. And I chose to try it yesterday, shortly after, for the second time, Jean-Pierre had echoed the words that the president himself had used in Raleigh, North Carolina, on the day after the debate, when he said, "I'm not a young man anymore. I don't walk as well as I used to. I don't talk as well as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to." And having heard her say that twice, it occurred to me to ask, should we properly place President Biden in that category known as disabled Americans?
Yeah.
We all remember Muhammad Ali when he lit that torch in Atlanta in 1996. Here was a man who was the very symbol of speed and agility and beauty and loquacity. And on that occasion, of course, he embodied none of those things, but he came to embody something else. A representative, if you will, of the millions of people around the world, including, by the way, Mrs. Rosen, who has multiple sclerosis, who struggle daily with disabilities and who, in various senses, prevail over them. And if President Biden were willing to admit of that vulnerability, he might somehow be able to transform this moment into something of a virtue, that he's carrying on bravely for the right reasons and so forth. But instead, Jean-Pierre is left twisted into the pretzel position of, on the one hand, asserting that he simply had a cold, but on the other, acknowledging that he doesn't walk, talk, or debate like he used to. And it's hard for Americans to understand, and it's hard for Democrats to understand. And it will be really interesting this evening when the group of Democratic governors arrives at the White House, what they have to say when they reach the stakeout position later.
Well, I mean, he does have he has a stutter, right? I keep hearing he has a stutter that emerged. James, what are you hearing there? Because, the reports now that Hunter Biden is attending meeting with White House staff, and we're now hearing that 25 Democrats are poised to go public and say that the president needs to step down. How do you think this plays out?
Well, on the Hunter Biden issue, Jean-Pierre was asked about those reports, and she simply suggested that it's a holiday weekend and you have more family around than usual, and so he might have wound up in a meeting and so forth. Of course, we have the word of President Biden himself.
Well, James, I don't know if you may have missed this, and forgive me for remembering it. It was, in fact, take your addict convicted felon's son to work day this week.
A holiday that doesn't get the publicity it deserves.
It really doesn't, but we're doing our best to draw attention, the more you know.
Certainly that might provide some vested interest in the kind of advice the younger Mr. Biden is providing. But in any case, that's how she handled that question. You asked about the 25 Democrats who are prepared to oppose him. We have 2 on the record so far. Congressman Lloyd Doggett, who's represented districts in Austin, Texas since 1995, who can be found in the AP photograph archive with Vice President Biden or Senator Biden at an event in 2006, smiling together. It's and then we saw Representative Tim Ryan, of Democrat of Ohio, also call on the baton to be passed to Vice President Harris, saying, "I was the first Democrat who ran for president against Joe Biden in 2020 to come out and endorse him. I love Joe Biden." So the people who are issuing these calls are hardly unsympathetic to the president. For those with long political memories, this might recall August 1974, when a delegation of Republican congressional leaders, including Barry Goldwater, visited the Nixon White House to persuade President Nixon, after the release of the so-called smoking gun tape and the Watergate tape, that the ball game was over and that he would not survive a Senate impeachment trial, and it was time to resign. And 3 days later, President Nixon did that. But it is also the case that President Biden has greater support being voiced on his behalf throughout the Democratic Party, at least among its elected officials, as opposed to its leading commentators, than President Nixon did at that point in 1974. Very different circumstances, obviously. But so it's hard to say how it plays out. There is one sort of ticking clock element to this, which is an Ohio state law mandates that the nominee shall be identified even before the convention is held, and that it is necessary in order for the nominee to appear on the ballot in all important Ohio, that law be observed. And so if there were any switcheroo of any kind to take place, it would have to happen in something like the next 35 days.
Interesting. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. James Rosen of Newsmax leading the way on the questioning of President Biden's capabilities, and I'm glad that your colleagues are now joining you 2 years later. And it's not lost on us that you referenced Muhammad Ali to bait me into asking you to do your Muhammad Ali and or Howard Cosell impersonation, but I didn't take the bait, James.
Muhammad, don't you think you're being a bit truculent? I don't know what truculent means, Howard, but if it's good, I'm back.
Thank you, James. We do have a Critter News story for you. It's local right here in our backyard, and I'll just let our friends at Channel 7 take it away.
His 3-year-old Aussie Doodle, who he adopted during the pandemic to help him with anxiety and depression.
Clark was my friend.
Knowles grew emotional talking about what happened over the weekend. He says on Thursday he dropped Clark off at what's called the Pets Hotel inside a PetSmart in the Potomac Yard Shopping Center. He says Clark had stayed here before without issues. On Saturday, while visiting New York, Knowles says he received a call from a veterinarian
who said, hey, like, are you the dog owner of Clark? And I was like, yes, like, how can I help you? And he just proceeded to tell me that a PetSmart employee dropped my dog off dead.
Knowles tells 7 News the vet got few answers from the PetSmart employee, and the vet thought Clark may have had a seizure.
He said,
this is so sad.
It is so sad. I will also say I have used that PetSmart.
Yeah.
And now I'm very concerned.
Well, it's under investigation. We don't know what exactly happened there. Although they do a thing called Pets Hotel. That's where it's like a kennel.
Yeah, it's a kennel.
Yeah, Pets Hotel sounds like a horror movie, doesn't it? They got to rebrand that.
It also sounds like a Disney film if we have a positive attitude, Larry.
Well, how can you be positive? We just did a story about a dog dying.
This is very, very sad. And apparently they think the dog had a seizure, and the owner is saying it can be brought on by dehydration, not being fed, or being overfeeded.
It's just weird.
Again, this is an investigation under investigation. We don't know what happened.
But PetSmart takes the dog and drops it off at a vet, and the vet has to. Wouldn't PetSmart call?
Yeah,
it's just everything about this seems really weird,
really sad,
and we feel really bad for Clark and Clark's daddy.
Yeah,
it's 7:54.